right, here we go. Ready to let people in?
Yes.
Hey, here we go. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Hello. This is the Edgewalker Cafe on June 15th, 2023. We are recording and we'll post the recording on the Edgewalker website. I'm Judy Neal. I'm the founder of Edgewalkers International, and we have several Edgewalker facilitators on this call as well. First of all, let me introduce Patricia Campanile, who has been with Edgewalkers from just about the very beginning, and Ellis Ralph, and Susan Furness, and Sandra Bargeman. And is there anybody else that's, I think that's it. We have a community of 19 Edgewalker facilitators, and we like to share who is hosting the different Edgewalker cafes so that you get to meet more members of our community and they get to share more of their own communities and their own wisdom. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Patricia. We're very excited about your guest today and about this topic.
Thank you so much, Judy, and welcome everybody. Thank you for being with us today on our June Edgewalker Cafe. As Judy mentioned, I'm Patricia Campanile, and I've been with Edgewalkers for decades now, but just so excited to be the host this month of the Edgewalker Cafe, and I'm really excited to introduce my dear friend and our guest, Marian Head. But one thing that might be fun, maybe in the chat, you can all put where you're calling in from. It's kind of neat to see where people are. Currently, I'm in Milford, Connecticut, at my family's beach house. So just to say hello from the East Coast, and good morning, good day, and good evening from wherever you're calling from. So
Patricia, I'm sorry, I accidentally muted you, and so would you please unmute? I apologize.
Did you get anything? No. Do I need
Yes.
to?
Yeah,
No.
just missed a half of a sentence.
Oh, I said, okay. So I was saying that Mary and I have been friends for decades now. We met actually in Kauai many years ago, Kauai, Hawaii, from mutual friends. And she and her husband, Glenn, and my husband, Dario, and I have been kind of navigating around for many years in many of the same places, Boulder, Colorado, and different parts of Florida, South Florida, and also Kauai, where we spend quite a bit of time. So I'm very excited to have Marian Head with us today, and she's coming straight from Aloha Marian from Kauai. And I had asked Marian quite a few months ago, I said, who do I want to invite from my next Edgewalker Cafe? And Marian came to mind because she is not only a true Edgewalker, an amazing woman and a dear soul friend, but she is also incredible background and history, and that I will read with you for you before we get going today to talk about her revolutionary agreements. So I don't miss anything. I'm going to read this so you can get as much as you can. So can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So no one label defines Marian Head. She's a businesswoman who built a multi-million-dollar global wellness business. She's an educator who co-chaired the nation's first graduate department of leadership and organizational transformation. Marian is a facilitator called on to serve some of the most transformational events in our history. Among them were the first global forums of spiritual and parliamentary leaders on human survival in Oxford and Moscow, which included His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, Vice President Al Gore, and President Mikhail Gorbachev. Marian is also the award-winning author of 3 books, including revolutionary agreements, a personal path to peace on earth, which we're going to be speaking about today, a gratitude journal for a healthy marriage, which is fabulous, and the Supersexual Revolution, co-authored with Barbara Marx Hubbard, and maybe we'll add a little bit about that at the end. That might be interesting. Last but not least, besides being my dear friend and colleague and part of my soul tribe, Marian is the proud mom of 32-year-old Michael and the loving wife of Glenn, who's also our dear friend, with whom she has gratefully shared her life for 39 years together. They enjoy living in Kauai, Hawaii, where they both served a local community and live as models for a harmonious world. Marian, welcome, my friend, welcome. And we're so aloha, and we're really pleased to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm so excited to be here because as I read once again the qualities of Edgewalkers on your website, it was so consistent with the qualities of the group from which the revolutionary agreements came. It's so much so that I have the purpose and mission of that group to share, but maybe I should start with a little bit of history about the agreements. Shall I go there?
Yeah, that would be perfect. Let us know where they came from, where they were birthed from. That would be a great introduction.
So way back in 1985, my husband Glenn and I were business consulting, really performance engineering, we called it, team building, and just all sorts of organizational development work. And so we invited one of our clients and many of our business associates and friends to our home to explore this question. How can we support one another in living our highest values in all aspects of our lives, and especially at work, which is where we spent most of our time? And during that first gathering at our home in Geneva Park, Boulder, Colorado, we began developing a set of agreements. We decided to meet again the next month and started that meeting by reading those agreements aloud. And these agreements were to help to guide us to fulfill our desire to live our highest values in all aspects of our lives. So at the next gathering, full day gathering, we started by reading the agreements aloud and then talking about how they were influencing our lives over the past month. Well, we decided to meet again the following month, and we did the same thing and the same thing the next month for the next 20 years. And this was not an organization. We did not have a website. We did not have membership, but there is a calling, probably the way you feel about Edgewalkers. There was a calling, a coming together, an ohana, as we would call it here in Hawaii, a family. So very much the same vibration as Edgewalkers, but way back in 1985. So as we evolved over those 20 years, the agreements evolved. They were originally the Geneva Group agreements. At some point, I said, we have to share these with others because we were having such magnificent experiences and results from practicing them with our clients, with our families, with our vendors, with our employees. They just had to be shared. So when I decided to share them and write a book about them, one of my friends who had written 37 books said, well, you can't use those agreements. I said, what do you mean you can't? I can't use those agreements. I said, well, they're too long. And absolutely every meeting, we were actually reading the agreements. They're 28, 30 words long. He said, what is the essence of each agreement?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the agreements became revolutionary. There was an essence to each agreement from my perspective. And those are now called revolutionary agreements. There were 16, there are now 12. They self-organized into 3, what I call pillars of a good life. And I'm going to do a screen share, even though they're behind me also.
Yeah. A
So I
screen
can
share
show you
would be
these
great
agreements.
so we can see them more clearly. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
All right, so the 3 pillars are truth, being the truth of who you are, your authentic self. And when I looked at the Edgewalkers website, what I saw in the qualities that you espouse and that you embody are mostly in that truth area. So truth being who you are, fully acceptance, accepting others for who they are in this moment, and gratitude, which is gratitude, feeling and expressing our deep appreciation for every moment of life. And I saw on this web, on our Zoom, Patricia Campanile, I'm sorry, Patricia, but another Patricia Campanile, not Patricia Campanile, but Patricia Wagner, who is the host of Living in Heart-Centered Gratitude Facebook group, which is all about bringing the gratitude up and out and into the world. So thank you, Patricia, for being here, both Patricias. All right, so I could just, Patricia, I could
I think
read
you
these
should leave
agreements.
these up maybe for a bit. I think
Okay.
it would be good to keep them up. And
Good. All right.
so, Mary, thank you for sharing that. And I know that maybe somebody just came on who maybe could mute themselves. That would be great. Thank you so much. Marian, I know that the agreements, they're also part of a book, right? That you sort of say that co-author with Barbara Marks Harbour, but tell us how she was connected to the agreements.
Okay, well, Barbara and I were writing another book together, and it was appropriate to bring the agreements into that book.
Mhm.
And while we were working on that book, because it was about the evolution of humanity, it was really Barbara and I don't know who, because when you're working together in a synchronous way, it's hard to know, in a synergistic way, it's hard to know who said what first, but out of our synergy, we decided that these agreements, which had been called Geneva Group agreements, were really revolutionary, evolutionary. And Barbara has always said that practicing these agreements, it accelerates our personal evolution. And that when we are fully evolved, we have no need to practice these because they are fully embodied. They are who we are. It's what we do. It's how we behave. So that's kind of how it wove in with Barbara. But it was after that time, actually, that the agreements went from being very lengthy descriptions to little nuggets that I love because people can enter them from wherever they are. It doesn't over-explain. And everybody's at a different place with everything.
Mm. And I think that they're simple and yet they're profound. And I know Dario and I have our bookmarks. We actually go in our planners and that, so we see them all the time. And I notice as I've gone through my life and my career, some speak to me more than others, depending on what I'm going through, what the world is going through, what my community, what is happening there. And I'm wondering, when you say truth, I agree to, or acceptance, I agree to, or gratitude, I agree to, the agree to, a sense, is making a commitment to live and be the agreements. Is that what, can you expound on that a little bit, please?
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked that, Patricia. It's such an important question. People often think of agreements as being between two or more people.
Mm-hmm.
These agreements are first and foremost agreements with ourselves. And I remember the first talk I gave, 2005, after the book came out in a big independent bookstore. And somebody after my talk said, well, what do you do when the other person doesn't live by these agreements? Like when you're in conflict or whatever. And I said, well, then you practice them even more.
Right.
You practice them even more. And the kind of results people get that make me so grateful for the time, energy, whatever, inspiration to write the book and to teach some courses, especially to coaches like Patricia Wagner, who's on this call, is that as a result of that, one of the coach trainees had was able to reconnect with a sister she had been estranged from for 10 years.
Wonderful.
These agreements they kind of give us permission. They give us permission to be fully who we are and to open our hearts and our minds to the other and to feel that exquisite, deep appreciation for life.
So wonderful, Marian. I love that. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking with those of us on the cafe today, if while you're witnessing this and with us today, Marian, why don't you and I just kind of go through each agreement just shortly, but if as you're listening, if there's any one or two agreements, maybe one in truth or one in acceptance or one in gratitude or just one or two that really speak to you personally now, right? As we go through them, those of you who are participating, like something like, wow, that's something I'm really inspired to do more of or be more of or share more of. Jot that down for yourself. And I think what we'll do, Judy, is maybe, I think this would be good as anyone on the call, I know we have your emails, we could send everyone a email, right, Judy, of the agreement. So if they want to.
I put it in the chat.
Okay, it's in the chat.
Thank
Great. Thank you, Judy. So people can get a copy of it for themselves. So
They have it now.
thank you,
Good.
Judy. So as we kind of go through this, because and then we're going to maybe have Marian, we'll do some Q&A and do some other exercises, but let's do that, Marian. And then those of you who are listening, just maybe identify one or two that really speak to you. So the truth one, it says, I agree to, Marian, you want to just speak to them and live my
Sure.
mission?
I agree to live my mission, which means this is not about achieving a mission. It's about discovering the essence of your purpose, your calling, your mission, your vision, whatever you want to call it. And then finding a way to live that essence every day. So it's not about someday having something, getting there. It's about what gives me the greatest joy and incorporating some part of that every day.
Okay.
So, and Patricia, I just want to say thank you for inviting people to choose one. Let's do that. Choose one in each of these pillars
Right.
that would give you possibly the most positive benefit by practicing it regularly. And, then you can decide if you're going to, but at least you've got one written down to look at. So
Wonderful.
I agree to speak my truth with compassion. Very simply, this just means being honest, which I think is one of your high qualities in Edgewalkers. Just being honest. Like if you're asked a question, not exaggerating the answer, not skirting the answer, no little white lies, just the truth in that moment. I agree to look within when I react. That was a big one.
Juicy.
Juicy. That means that if I feel triggered, triggered like something doesn't leave your mind or your heart, it just keeps going over and over and you can't sleep. And it's like, oh, why did that person say that? And oh, I don't like when that person did that. For me, 100% of the time, if it's nagging me like that, it's not about them, it's about me.
Right. Exactly.
And what it is about me, usually, is that there's some time in my life, maybe still present, but oftentimes in the past, that I have acted that way or said that thing. And I have I'm kind of unresolved about that with myself. And so when somebody else holds up a mirror for me, which is what we all do for each other, I get triggered. Rah! And I make it all about that person until I go, oh yeah, I agree to
Thank
look
you.
in when I react. Yeah.
Powerful.
And then I agree to keep doing what works and change what doesn't. I used to say that one agreement is worth the price of any workshop on revolutionary agreements. Because what if there's something in your life that would be better if it was changed? Well, we know now that we can actually create new neural pathways in our brain and let old ones atrophy. And so we can create new thoughts, new habits. We might not be able to change the circumstances, but we can certainly change our thoughts about them and our attitude about them.
Absolutely.
So that's
Powerful.
true.
Truth.
So write down for a moment which one of those would serve you the most. And you know, if it serves you, it'll serve those you serve, if you practice it daily.
Hmm.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to take a peek at who's here, if I can see that. Who else has joined us? All right, so maybe we should move on. I can't see everybody, but I can because we're in this screen share mode.
Acceptance.
Okay, acceptance. Okay, I'm just scrolling because I don't want to miss saying hello to. Oh, I'm just so happy with all of you being here. Mahalo. Okay, acceptance. I agree to listen with my heart. Well, that just means instead of listening with our critical mind, like, how is what you're saying like me? I can't wait to tell you. Just listening openly, or I don't think what you're saying is true, or any other thing that judges the person you're listening to, or compares yourself, or analyzes. Like, just listen with your open being. I say open heart, but really it's just the center of the whole being, to be present with someone. Yeah. I agree to respect our differences. Oh, this is a huge one.
Especially
This is
nowadays.
Yeah, this is a huge one on a global scale. It's also huge on our daily scale. And when we put it into effect with the people closest to us, we are being models for a harmonious world that Patricia mentioned earlier. That is, my husband and I live to do that, to be models for a harmonious world. And that was Geneva Group's purpose, for us to do that. So how do we do that? Let's come back to that, Patricia, if you want more of that. I have a really
Sure.
great belief that helps me to do that all the time.
Okay.
I agree to resolve conflicts directly. That just means if you have an issue with somebody, or if I have an issue with someone, I take it directly to that person, and directly meaning as soon as possible. That's it. No gossip, no talking to somebody else about it. It is such a relief to do that. For those of you who do that now, you know, it is such a relief, because when is most of the stress around conflict? Is it in the moment that you're with the person resolving it? No, it's in the hours before, or the days or weeks or months, or like the woman I told you about, the 10 years before with her sister.
Right.
So resolve conflicts directly with the person as soon as possible. And the last one in acceptance is I agree to honor our choices. And all that means is to stop beating ourselves up for choices we made that turned out not to work out so well. If it didn't work out so well, you can go back to the agreement of doing what works and change what doesn't, change what doesn't work. We spend too much energy beating ourselves or others up for choices that we make, instead of just moving forward in a way that supports us and everyone else. All right, Patricia?
Yes, so we move on to, and then I want to have some comments to make, but shall we move on to gratitude? Thank you so much for your powerful yet concise and simple and practical ways that you're really sharing the agreements, but how they can apply to our everyday life and work and relationships. So very important. So, so how about gratitude? I love gratitude.
Thank you. Okay. I do have a hand raised. Should we wait, Patricia?
Why don't we get through the gratitude and then we could answer some questions.
Okay, very good. So thank you for your patience. So in the gratitude agreements, I agree to give and receive thanks. Well, that seems simple, but I can tell you that most of us are really good at giving thanks and not so good at opening to receive them. And in my experience, opening to receive thanks and learning to receive appreciation opens the flow to receive whatever else you want in your life. So it's a good one to practice. I agree to see the best in myself and others. I think if I had to choose one, Patricia, that could make the biggest difference in the world, it might be this one.
Right.
because we so often see or are critical of each other and ourselves, if we look for and see the best in ourselves and others, it will eventually lead to the last agreement, which we're getting to. But next is, I agree to look for blessings in disguise. By looking back and asking ourselves, well, just think for a moment. Have you ever, most of us have had difficult times, tragedies even. If you look back at some of those, can you see that they had at least an aspect of a blessing that was in disguise at the time? So by looking back and seeing that, it helps us to know that there are blessings. And when we're in the middle of something difficult, we can trust that somehow, even if we can't see it, even if we don't even know what it is in this lifetime. I can trust that. And the final one is, I agree to lighten up, because these agreements can be pretty heavy. You know, it's kind of like meditation. Some of us, we sit in meditation, we look very serious. But I was taught to when I sit in meditation, to put on the face of an innocent child. I love that. I thank my teacher for that. And lighten up. It's really just about being present with one another. So that's a quick overview of all 12 of the revolutionary agreements. Thank you, Patricia.
Marian, thank you so much. And again, I want to invite those of us that are with us today to look into the truth, the acceptance, and the gratitude agreements, and see if there's one in each that maybe speaks to you that you would like to integrate or practice, or that calls to you, just for an old personal identification. Because one of the things that Marian and I always talk about with the agreements is they're integrated, but I used the word a little bit ago, is they're practical, they're applicable. And that's one of the things that I love to them. And that's what a lot of what Edgewalkers is, we're bridges between the inner life, the spiritual life, but the day-to-day life, the business world. And these apply in that way as well. Would you not say so, Marian?
Oh, absolutely. And I rarely say the revolutionary agreements do something, because they don't. They don't when they're sitting on the paper. Right? When we practice them, we get great results. And if you're interested in some of those results, you can see it at the Revolutionary Agreements website. There's a little tab called Results. And there's so much more than I could put on that website or want to. So have your own experience is what I'd like to say by practicing. And, you know, we looked at having one or circling one agreement or writing down one agreement in each area. I think I want to encourage you to actually circle one of those 3 agreements to start with, because whatever agreement you start with does lead to others. So by practicing one, it will lead you to practice other agreements. And Patricia, should I share what the one agreement is?
Sure, please.
Because if you practice whatever ones you practice, they will also lead to what I call the one agreement.
And what would that be, please?
And that would be, I agree to be myself with a capital S to denote the divine nature of ourselves. So that's it. I agree to be myself. Yeah.
Well, these agreements, if you work them, they'll work. They support that, I believe, because I've been using them, practicing them, and aware of them. Some more than others, some more with greater practice or greater results than others. But we're all works in progress. But the key is the agreement. Really, to me, is to be myself and to help my clients as well be their self with a capital S. If we all did that, the world would shift. And that's a lot.
Yes, because when we are coming from our divine nature, we naturally exhibit these behaviors naturally.
Right. There's nothing to do, nothing to even practice. It's who we are. It's who we're inherently being.
Yes. And in the meantime, we have a guide to practice. One of my students said, this is the structure he's been looking for to be the change he wants to see in the world. He said, it's been nice to say that all these years, and thank you, Gandhi, for those words, because they are powerful, to be the change we wish to see in the world. And this man, Mark Porteous, he said, this gives me the structure to do that. So, whatever it does for you.
Wonderful.
Hallelujah.
Well, I hope that these are useful and valuable for everyone at the cafe today. And I know that there was one individual I know had his hands up, but is there anyone, we could go into some Q&A, and Marian, you even had some questions, but what is this from Ellen? Ellen, my dear friend Ellen, I am beginning with acceptance of all that is in my city-state community world, being the change I wish to see. And wonderful, Ellen, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Can we stop sharing so that we can see everybody?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
There, thank you.
All right. And I know that Shakrai in Mumbai, you had your hand raised. Thank you for patience.
I raise my hand first and then think about what I have to say.
Okay.
As usual. But the second one seemed messy for me. There were too many honoring. I think I put it in the chat, but let me. How do you honor your choices? How is it honoring the choices and respecting differences different? I mean, for me, it looked to be closer. The other challenge that I have with truth, especially, is I seem to have too crazy a rationalization scheme for anything I've done. And people say you couldn't have thought about all of that before doing it. So am I kind of just protecting myself, or did I really think that through? I mean, I don't know. That looked messy for me for that reason.
Thank you for bringing that forward. And do you say your name Shakri? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Thank you,
Shakri. All right. First of all, you asked about the difference between respecting our differences and honoring our choices, which I will address now. I may ask you to come back to the last question again. So there, like I said, one agreement leads to the other. So really, there's no difference in anything. However, the distinction, let's just say there's a distinction. Respecting our differences, no, let's go to honoring our choices. It's easier. I really like to apply these agreements right here, right now, in my home, as somebody shared in their community, right here. So honoring our choices, well, let me just ask you right here, how many of you, by a show of hands, have ever made a mistake? Okay, so, and how many of you have ever beat yourself up emotionally about that mistake? Or somebody else makes a mistake and you criticize them or you're critical of them. Honoring our choices just means, I just want to say this, get over it. You took a step, you made a choice, you made a decision, you did whatever you did, you notice it's not working. Oh, I know, here's the best. So the Geneva Group agreement that went with this, this idea is something like, I agree to honor our choices, knowing that each of us is doing the best that we can in that moment of, given our experiences in that moment of choice. So in that moment of choice, you didn't go, the ones of you who raised your hand saying, I made a mistake, you didn't say, well, now I'm going to make a decision that's going to be a mistake. I'm going to make a decision that really doesn't work for me. Or I'm going to make a decision that hurts everybody. No, of course not. You always make the decision that is best in the moment, given your experience, given everything that happened before, what you think is going to happen next. And then sometimes it doesn't work out. Okay, move on. Honor your choice that you made, honor that you made a choice. Some people don't even make choices or decisions, period. Move on. Maybe you have to change something now. Does that distinguish that for you, Shakri? Yes. And then respecting our differences,
Yes.
wholly different. as a distinction. And then the last part of your question, I didn't quite understand. That was kind of messy for me.
So you're talking about the first agreement about truth.
Yes.
And I don't seem to speak up immediately. Something like that, resolving conflicts immediately from the other one.
Ah, yes, yes.
So I don't speak up, and only when I'm pressed to the wall that I speak up. And it always looks like as if I've written a PhD thesis about why I've done something or anything. And
So Shakri,
so-
that is so fabulous that you shared that. Fabulous, because that PhD thesis, that takes a long time, doesn't it? A long time. So we're in the process for a long time trying to figure out what am I going to do and who's right and who's wrong. And I mean, I'm right, excuse me, I'm right, you're wrong. And let me lay out why that is. And I'm going to take a side moment here to say, Patricia, I am not watching the time, so please rein me in when you need to.
We're okay. We're telling
Okay, good.
we're 35 minutes in, Marian. We're good.
Okay, thank you.
I'll let you know.
Because I really want to answer this question fully. Okay. So it's a practice. I used to be terrified of conflict, and like you and like many others, avoid it.
Mhm.
But then these agreements came along in my life. They were a gift to me. Now I get to gift them to you. And this one, I've been practicing them now for 38 years. So this one, somewhere along the line, became the one that was next for me to practice. Like everything else, as you practice it, it becomes easier. And in this case, this agreement, which might have been my hardest agreement to start, is now my easiest. So as soon as I feel tension, as soon as I feel something's up, like Patricia being a friend, if something was up, if she said something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, which I can't even imagine, but if she did, I'd be on the phone in a flash saying, oh, and here's the answer to this. You don't do it yourself. You don't figure it out. You don't think about it and say, oh, why did she do that? I wonder if she did that because blah, 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 blah. Or maybe, or she was always like that. Or, I mean, creating all these stories makes it worse. It just makes it bigger. So the thing to do when it's directly is to say, something didn't feel right to me, Patricia. I'd like to replay that and go over that again. I didn't quite get what you meant by this. Or that didn't feel good to me. It didn't feel good to me when you said that. What was that about? So you're in relationship. I mean, what's most important? You've heard this before. Is it more important to be right?
We're in
Or
relationship.
well, you've heard or happy, but I say, or in relationship.
Right. Mhm.
So you solve it together. It's much better to not have the answer going in to resolve a conflict, because resolution really needs both or all of you. Does that make sense, Shakri?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted to give you my version of truth in 3 words. In Sanskrit, we say it's Satyam, Priyam, Hitam. So it kind of, Satyam is truth. Priyam is saying it in a way that the other person can listen to you. And Hitam is essentially beneficial to the other person in some way.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I hope you'll put that in the chat. And I
Yes,
hope I can get
please.
can I get a transcript of that chat?
Judy,
maybe?
Judy will make sure.
Okay, good. Thank you.
I want to make a comment, Marian, that I think is relevant to the ultimate agreement, which is being myself with a capital S, the divine essence. As I listen to you and I look at all these agreements, the more we are in the space of integrating, feeling, moving towards that divine essence, all of these things become easier. It's like a chicken or an egg. We need the agreements to move into the divine space, but the more we're connected to that true essence of who we are, then the agreements are easier. But that's just what I get, that just because there's not a lot of ego involved.
Right.
Made a mistake,
Right.
or how can we agree to disagree, or any of them is what really comes to me. And
Yeah.
my favorite, the thing about the blessings in disguise, I want to say too, is I love one of my favorite quotes is, and it applies to this, is Anthony Robbins, is everything is happening for us and not to us. So
Mhm.
regardless of what may be going on, if we see that things are blessings in disguise, whether they're a disagreement, whether it's a choice we've made, when we can use them consciously for our growth, in that, then there are no accidents and there actually are no mistakes. So I just wanted to put that in as a sidebar.
Thank you. And I really appreciate the questions and challenges. If there's something challenging you, or you don't like the agreement or whatever. So bring it all on.
Does anyone else have a question or a comment or anything they'd like to, Peggy?
Peggy.
Hi, Peggy. We can't,
Peggy's muted.
oh, Peggy, we can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
It's not working.
There she is.
Oh, there you go. We got you, Peggy.
Okay.
Hi, Peggy.
Hi there. I think the blessings in disguise is so awesome, because what I did with that teaching from another source, spoken a little differently, was go back to things that were pretty awful in an earlier part of this life, and simply ask for guidance and what was the blessing of this. And the stuff that comes up in doing that is like, wow, I would never have thought.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I can give you an example, but I think you get the idea.
Did it bring you to a grateful place, Peggy?
Oh, you bet.
So from where you were with it to a grateful place, it's a huge transition. It's a transformation, really.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you, Peggy. Glad to see you.
Good to see you, Patricia.
Anyone else a question? I'm sorry, this is
This is
Sue.
Sue.
Hi, Sue.
You're muted.
You're muted, Sue. Go
There
ahead.
you are. Oops, now you're muted again.
Go ahead, Sue.
Okay, this is the Zoom dilemma. You're muted, you're not muted. I can't hear you. I hear you. The agreement that came up for me is give and receive thanks,
Mhm.
which has taken me a lifetime to receive. I changed the word to compliments or positive comments. Like I was never able to receive a positive comment. I would, oh, that's okay. I would like, shield myself and not take it in. And so over the years, I've learned to take things in. And so oftentimes people who have just met me and kind of get my humor say, oh, you're so funny. And I say, I know. And they're taken aback. And for me, it's owning that, because I know it. But is that like receiving compliments without humility? Should I say, thank you, I agree with you? I mean, I'm not sure how I should react, I guess. I'm being myself by saying, I know. But
Which is funny.
It's funny, I know. It's not what people expect,
Which is
maybe-
what makes it funny.
Yeah. So that's what
I
came up
like
for
it.
me, is like, am I receiving thanks with humility? And is that important? That's my
Well,
question.
I would suggest that you practice different ways. What the heck? It's just a practice. Life is just practice. Every day is practice. When I was in sales, my favorite motivational speaker said the way she handles the sale is she considers every day practice. So she's just practicing. I mean, this isn't it. She's just practicing. And it's like took the pressure off. So just practice different ways. When I do exercises, or when my coaches offer exercises to practice this agreement, we don't actually allow the receivers of the appreciation to say anything. Okay, we ask them to open their arms, so no crossed arms, open their arms, to breathe in the appreciation, to look at the person in their eyes if it's culturally appropriate for them, and to smile if they feel good about it, which most people do and should after they take a deep breath, taking it in. So, but no words, because we can sometimes use the words, as you called it, Sue, a shield, like, oh, thank you. No, thank you. Oh, it's because of one of my favorites is, I'm just a reflection of you. I was like, oh, okay, I should just receive that and say, and not say anything, just open, smile, nod. That's what we teach, but it's going to be different for each person. I appreciate the question, Sue.
All right,
I
thank
think,
you, Marian.
Marian, another great thing to do is just say thank you. That's it.
Yes,
And
that's
thank
it.
you. Hmm?
But I
Or
know,
my pleasure, if it's true,
Sure.
whatever
right.
it was, my
Mhm.
pleasure.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Or Marian, you mentioned something that you might have questions. I don't know if you do of the group, but anyone else have a question or anything, Marian, that you want to ask of anyone or anything else you
Oh.
want to share?
It looks like
Patricia
Patricia Wagner.
Yeah.
Yeah, just raised her hand.
I'm sorry.
Aloha, Patricia. So glad to see you.
And it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to hear my friend Marian Head. And I just want to give a testimonial for her. It was 2010 when I first met Marian. She was the keynote speaker at a conference where I was, and she asked the audience, or she told them a story about what would you do if you were told you only had 6 months to live between now and 6 months from now, so that on the last day of your life, you could say, I did what I came here to do. That and the revolutionary agreements, Live My Mission, were life-changing. They changed the whole trajectory of my life. And so to me, Marian Head is just monumental in my life. And these revolutionary agreements truly are life-changing. So I just wanted to give that testimonial here today.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm so happy you're here. And like I said, Patricia has a fabulous Facebook group called Living in Heart-Centered Gratitude, and attracts the most wonderful people to that group. So bless you, Patricia, for living your mission. Ah,
So Marian, one of the things that you and I spoke about is how the agreements, maybe looking at the world right now, my kind of larger, I mean, I think it all starts with self. We all, one person at a time, but maybe in looking at the larger community or even the world at large, we spoke about, is there an agreement or agreements to focus on that as it would relate to the larger conversation? I mean, they all obviously apply, but we had spoke about that. Do you have any comments about that or anything you want to share?
what comes up for me in this moment, and it was a different one that came up for me earlier today,
Mhm.
is the one that I skipped for some reason because I wanted to give it more space if we got to it, which is I agree to respect our differences.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what I'd like to share with everyone is the mental construct that I have about humanity that helps me to respect our differences. And first of all, let me just say, some of you will understand this, some of you may not understand this, that we are not our thoughts. So we are the observers of our thoughts, or the observers of the observer of our thoughts, or whatever. And so we sometimes feel like we have no control over anything. But one of the things I know is we have control over our thoughts. We can shift from a negative thought to a positive thought if we choose to. So you can say I made up this story, or you can say this story is true. whatever you like. But I believe that each of us is a cell in the body of humanity.
Mhm.
Now, let's just say that I'm an eye cell. And when I was immature, I would look at this ear cell and I would say, who are you? And who needs you? Anyway, you can't see. But then as I mature, I go, oh, wow, you're an ear cell. You can hear. That's really important because I can see, but I can't hear. So I'm really glad that you're here in this body of humanity, or in this body, in the body of humanity. Well, guess what? There are other functions that aren't as pretty as seeing and hearing, like a liver cell. A liver cell attracts toxins in order to process them. So when we're critical of someone because they seem toxic, well, that might be their function. What I know is they have a function. They're here on Earth at this time. They're part of the body of humanity. They have a function. And I say, thank you, universe, for not giving me that function. I don't like that function, but somebody else is doing it. I'm really happy with my function, but I'm really glad that that person that I might otherwise call toxic instead of fulfilling their function is doing such a good job. And that person is doing such a good job. And that is how I respect our differences. Does that make sense?
I don't know, it makes almost tears me up for some reason, touches me, because it's the, the concept of oneness or interconnectedness or the holistic model. It's that we're all interconnected. It's no accident that we're all here on this planet at the same time being who we're meant to be. So like your heart, Ellen. Yes, that was beautiful, Marian. Really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Very important, particularly in the times we're in. I know for myself also, when there's somebody who maybe I don't agree or I don't understand, or if my critical mind comes in, I do my best to be aware and go into curiosity, like, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on there. Or, I wonder what that's about, instead of immediately going into my ideas or judgments about what it should or shouldn't be, because they may have that about me as well. So but it really is a practice. And I think that the commonality, I think, in working with the agreements is consciousness too, is self-awareness, it's a moment-to-moment practice, regardless of what it is. And I think about Oprah. Every year, Oprah Winfrey picks a word. I don't know if you know this, that she's going to focus on. And I think like one year she picked courage, and like, excuse me, but the shit hit the fan in her life. So to see how courageous she was. So I noticed with the agreements that if I pick an agreement, I don't even share it with people. I notice, okay, I picked this agreement. So everything that is not of this agreement, or that is going to invite me to embody it more, will show me. There might be an edge, there might be a rub, but it's a way to, it's like a muscle, it's a way to practice it. But it involves consciousness, but also a deep commitment to being that divine self.
Absolutely. Beautifully.
For me too, Marian. That's one of the reasons, like many of us on this call, but you and I are so close. So we have a shared path in that way, obviously, as individuals. So anyway, I just wanted to.
But that was so beautifully said, Patricia. It's true. And yeah, I think maybe you told me about this Oprah one word years ago. And so I started choosing one agreement a year, because I'm in my 38th year of using these agreements. So how deep can I go? Right. Last year, I agreed to lighten up. That was a fun year. And this year, I agree to listen with my heart, because I tend to be very analytical. And so when I'm listening, I'm kind of analyzing, and analyzing can lead to criticism or judgment. And so I agree to listen with my heart. And this is the year that I began my volunteering for hospice. It's perfect. It's a perfect place for me to practice.
Marian, can you expand on the listening with my heart a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Because one of the things that I don't know how I get myself to that situation is I end up resonating, or when we're doing a listening exercise, I will tell them things that the other person wants to tell me but has not told me. And it happens so often, and I'm wondering what's wrong with everybody else. No, I'm kidding. What's wrong with me?
Oh, are you saying that you intuit what that person wants to say and isn't saying?
Yeah, so I'm just listening. So I mean, when somebody's spoken a little bit about themselves, and now I'm reflecting back to them on what I heard, I end up saying stuff that they want to tell me, but they haven't told me yet.
So
I
you're
don't know.
feeling. So you're feeling, and it's true for them. So you're just feeling
Yeah,
their
it's true
whole
for them.
being.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
You're
Yeah,
feeling their whole being. Beautiful.
wonderful. Yeah. Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for that question, for that sharing, Shakri. So we're 5 of the hour. Is there anything else? I know, Judy, if you want to do some, some business about Edgewalkers, but Marian, I mean, do you have websites? I think they're on the chat, right? It's agreement, and you have a book, right? The book is agreements. It's agreementsbook.com. Is that right?
Revolution. Agreementsbook.com is the fastest way. It'll take you to the store at my website, but it's just to make sure that you get the right edition, because we now have a second edition, and all you do is click on that and it'll take you to Amazon to buy it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And also you can get a big poster if you want. The funniest place I've seen this poster, and I've seen it in many places, is on the ceiling of someone's bedroom. She likes to go to sleep looking at it, the agreements, and wake up in the morning looking at the agreements. Okay, but I've seen them in healthcare rooms, waiting rooms, in healthcare situations, and corporate offices. Yeah, so those are the big agreements. Now you're going to get a little, you can pull that little one off and just print that on your printer. If Judy said she put it into the chat. And it's also on the front of the Agreements Institute, use revolutionaryagreements.com, which takes you to Agreements Institute. It's too much. Revolutionary Agreements is all you need to remember.com, or Agreements Book will take you there too. Agreementsbook.com.
And I also recognize and want to, acknowledge you for all these years of creating these and putting them out into the world the way that you have, and sharing them. And I think that even with the work we all do as Edgewalkers, wherever we are on the planet, these are universal. And I want to just comment that I think that these can apply. They truly are a personal path, but they can be applied to organizations, to communities, right? To profit, non-for-profit. I think they can apply anywhere. Leadership is what a lot of us work with.
Yes, and there's a chapter in the second edition. One of the reasons I wrote the second edition is I had so much feedback from readers that was so helpful, so that now one of the chapters is how people have created agreements for their own organizations, and the agreements are there. So from large Fortune 100 to small mom and pop to conferences, all sorts of agreements that are in use, which is wonderful. So, so I had an opportunity a minute ago when I was stumbling around with the words, or as Shakri said, being messy, to go, oh, Marian, you're so messy. And then stop from saying, oh, why did you do that? Well, it is 7 o'clock in the morning, but that's an excuse. Just move on and say, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so happy to connect with all of you. I love the vibration of this group. And thank you for having me here.
Marian, you're I think everyone, a true Edgewalker, and just my dear friend, but colleague. And I think that this was so, again, practical, inspiring, purposeful, and perfect for our Edgewalker community. I think those of us here would hopefully agree. So thank you for your time and your presence and your heart and your vision and your being available. We love you.
I love
Thank
Patricia.
you. So Judy, do you want to kind of maybe share anything for Edgewalkers, any upcoming cafes or news or?
Yes, thank you. And Marian, mahalo, thank you so much. Mahalo nui loa. This was so inspiring, and I can see how working with these agreements would be so healing for individuals, for relationships, for teams, wherever they're applied. And you're really bringing a gift to the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just a couple of quick announcements. July 10th is our next Edgewalker Cafe. We usually do them on Thursdays, but I will be at a folk festival and on that Thursday in July. And Monday, July 10th was an opportunity to bring a panel to the Edgewalker community of several people from different walks of life that are looking at this question: is the flourishing of all possible in today's divided and polarized world? So they're going to be addressing that from a religious point of view, from a community development point of view, from an organizational development point of view, and just a rich stew of things to think about and perhaps lead us each to action in bridging the divided and polarized world. In August, Susan Furness will be hosting an Edgewalker Cafe that will be no speaker, no panel, instead will be a community dialogue. And Susan, do you have a couple of words you want to say about that? And I couldn't find the date again, if you'll tell us the date.
Hi, Judy. Hello, everybody. Funnily enough, I was just trying to look that up myself, but I have just found it, and it's August the 17th, everybody. It will be 11 o'clock Eastern time, and we will be actually focusing this community conversation, so all of us can take part. And we thought we'd call it the infinite walk with well-being. So please come and join in that. It's just an inquiry into our mind, our body, and our spirit. And Marian, I think the agreements will just be such a wonderful springboard to take us into that inquiry. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And I think that's it for our announcements. So back to you, Patricia.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your presence, for being with us today. And Marian, again, thank you. You want to just stay on for a minute with maybe with Judy and I at the end, if we could do that. But thank you all for being. Have a wonderful rest of your week and your weekend. And we look forward to seeing you again. God bless. And here's to your divine higher self just expanding in your heart. Much love. Thank you. Aloha. Bye, everybody.